Because a lot of these media outlets present lies as if it's truth. They don't do fact checking. So people can come on there and make assertions and then find out that these assertions are not true.
Trump attacks the mayor of Portland in the wake of the shooting death of a right-wing provocateur. Protester, maybe. Obviously, a lot of violence taking place over the past week. 3 people shot, 2 people fatally in Kenosha by a radicalized right-wing 17-year-old boy who was brought to was traveling with his mom. Also, apparently got some water from the cops before he went about shooting, or at least some concern and some appreciation for the work he was doing. Meanwhile, in Portland, it's unclear, according to police at this point, whether the shooting was political or not, but a Patriot prayer was shot and killed in Portland. As you know, there's a 17-year-old in custody in Kenosha who basically was been trained from a very young age by his mom, I think, to respond in the manner in which he did, which was, I've got to go and protect. I don't know who he thought he was protecting. He's not even from Kenosha. But this is an opportunity for me to engage in the fantasy, the 17-year-old fantasy mind that I have, where I can play, paramilitary, like his mom apparently has taught him to do.
Hey.
Shot 3 people, killed 2. He will not condemn that. He will not condemn a guy who shot 3 people, killed 2 people. Incidentally, that 17-year-old, this is going to come as a shock to people. Not a business owner.
He's a business defender.
Yeah.
He's not a business owner, and I don't know what businesses he was defending.
Well, according to an article by Matt Binder that I read today to kind of catch up on this, he was nowhere near the business he claimed to be defending when the shooting happened, when he shot those people.
Well, he's got to go out and preemptively protect the businesses, I guess, supposedly. I mean, this is what Donald Trump wants. They want to make this a big story. They want this to happen. If Donald Trump has his way, this will happen in every city across the country.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think anyone should be surprised that it is happening in this way, and no one should be surprised that the cops seem to be on the side of the white militia groups, because there's a lot of overlap in between the cops and the white nationalist militia groups, and more reporting is coming out on that every day.
You can say it was absolutely obvious that 17-year-olds who have been trained with semi-automatic weapons for a moment like this, who are geared up, see the opportunity for them to play militiaman is going to happen. That was, that's like this idea that other people come in to protect other people's property. Is that what's really going on here? There's no ideological basis for these other people to come in. They're just coming in because they're good neighbors, and they just happen to have their AR-15. I'm going to go in and I'm going to protect this mom and pop store I've never even been in. No, that's not what's happening.
No, they're totally horny to kill some leftists.
Exactly.
And people of color.
This is an ideological fight. Not one of those people show up. I mean, where were those same people when armed militia went and stormed their state house? Why weren't they protecting people when the National Guard wasn't mobilized? Of course not. That's absurd. Are we to believe, and I guess that's the end of it, are we to believe that this guy has been training with guns for years for the opportunity to protect a business that he has no idea what they are? That's what he's been doing all these years. There's no ideology. There's no ideology involved in this. It's all just about, hey, look, Pa, they're coming in for the AP, grocery store, and I got to get out there. I'm going to grab my AR-15. Come on, Lassie, let's go and save the general store. No, that's absurd. That's absurd. There isn't a single individual who goes out there with a gun whose primary directive, primary incentive is to protect other people's businesses. Give me an effing break. You could have a whole list of things that they're doing. They want to fight the leftists. They want to fight the black people. They want to dress up like they're, Rambo. They want to shoot their guns at other people and feel like it's validated, on and on and on. And the actual desire to protect these strangers' businesses is somewhere down, like it's out of frame in terms of where on the list this is. Yeah. This is a joke. Just go out there. If you're going to defend this, if Ben Shapiro is going to defend this, you just say, like, look, this is a race war, and the white guys are going to get out there with their guns, and they're going to fight anybody who has a problem with this. And that's that. And that's inevitable to happen. I mean, to some extent, there is a certain inevitability because guys like Ben Shapiro have been priming their audience for years. Just go back to the shooter he inspired up in Canada, who shot up, I think he thought that he was shooting Muslims. I mean, Ben Shapiro has been trafficking in this stuff for ages.
I do think it plays a role in terms of the purpose that the police serve in upholding, private property, white supremacy, capitalism, and all that shit that I'm always saying is connected.
Right. Well, there's no doubt that the government and the police, by extension, are there to protect property rights. Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
He's on the side of the police, and the police are on his side too.
Oh well, that's true. But I think from their perspective, it's cultural, right? Like, I mean, I think from their perspective, it's completely cultural. They don't care about the property rights. Neither one of them own that property. They don't care about it. They're not worried that the property rights system is about to fall. They want to take the opportunity to go into battle and have this sort of like just this like fig leaf of we're trying to maintain order. I mean, give me a break.
No, I do not think that he knows what he's doing in the wide angle. I don't think he's like, well, I uphold white supremacy, but also capitalism. Therefore, I'm defending private property.
If that's what constitutes a decent person, I don't know what does, but if decent person includes someone who's going to shoot multiple people in a night under any circumstance, then I don't know that the word decent has any connotation. I don't know what it could possibly mean. Like the parameters for being decent are awful wide, but they're going to continue to hammer this. This is just hardworking folks grabbing whatever they find around the house to go help out, their neighbor's store. What was this? Was the first night of protests? I mean, like, his tolerance level was one night. I mean, because here's the game they're playing. He's saying, I'm not advocating this, and I'm not supporting it. I'm just sitting here and giving you analysis. I'm just here. I'm not saying that 2 + 2 = 4 is good or bad. I'm just explaining to you that 2 + 2 = 4. Except for one of those twos is a lie. This is not hardworking, decent people grabbing their nearest AR-15 and hitting the streets to protect their buddies.
Yeah.
These are people who have been training with these weapons for years, waiting for an opportunity to justify using them on black people, on white people who are protesting in favor of black people, on leftists, on whomever. This is not, and if those are decent people, if that's the definition of decent people, I want to know what sits outside that definition. So can you imagine like having a guest on about the Rittenhouse shooting, murder, and not really sort of boning up on it at all? That would be weird to me. Now, my understanding is that Rittenhouse is from Illinois.
Crossing state lines.
His community was being protected. I don't wonder what he means by his community.
Right.
He's in the diaspora of Kenosha in Illinois. But I don't know if he felt like his community is like just fellow gun-toting white people. But the idea, like, he's a 17-year-old kid. I mean, you imagine, like, contrast this. He's a 17-year-old kid. I mean, yes, granted, he had a weapon and he was geared up and he was there brandishing this weapon with no sign on his shoulder. Like, I'm only 17. It's unbelievable to me that they think they can get away with this, but they are getting away with it within their own people. It's just a question of, like, how narrow is that? Otto Matlek. Also, what's wrong with Destiny? He keeps defending the Kenosha shooter. I have no idea about Destiny in that regard. Bear at home, too. Destiny's argument is based on morality. If the shooter had a reasonable view, he would be killed by the mob. I guess if I put a gun, I don't know what morality means in that respect. When you go down with a gun to a protest, you are inviting violence. It is called just a reasonable person going to a gun to a protest must realize there is a significant chance that they would be using that gun. This is not a situation where he's in his closing up the shop, after a hard day at work, and all of a sudden, like, there's marauders coming in and he's afraid for his life and he runs into the back room and gets a gun to protect himself.
Right.
This is a guy going to look for trouble. It's like, when you make a decision to bring a gun to a protest, you're responsible for what happens with that gun.
Yeah, and even if you take these arguments at face value, right, like he's protecting private property, that's based on a bad morality that says violence towards property is worse than violence towards human beings.
And I'm sorry, again, I don't the idea that he's protecting property. I want to know other circumstances where he's out there protecting property. Is he out there also fighting for contract rights and whatnot? No, the guy wanted an opportunity to go into a situation with a gun.
Mm-hmm. Rittenhouse was 17 at the time, and he felt compelled to stand up to the Black Lives Matter protesters and demonstrators. And he said his explicit desire was to protect property. Now, again, he was 17 at the time, but he killed 2 people. That raised a lot of eyebrows. The judge's phone went off in the middle of the trial, and it played a particular song that seems in keeping with his past history.
I don't think that's necessarily what I'm supposed to do. But I think the court has to make some findings as it relates to the bad faith on the part of the prosecution. And if the court makes a finding that the actions that I had talked about were done in bad faith, then I think both elements.
I'm proud to be an American. God bless the USA, and particularly the version that I remember quite vividly because I went to many Trump rallies at my previous gig with TYT, and that was Trump's walk-on song. Now, you could say, wow, that's a coincidence. Maybe he's just a patriot, and usually that does coincide quite well with fascism, that self-identification.
We also know about this, Judge. Do we have the clip of the Lee Greenwood song playing?
We played that yesterday.
Oh, you did? Okay. So you've heard the clip of the Lee Greenwood song. And then listen to this. Like, what do you think he's saying here when they're talking about breaking for lunch and about getting Asian food, whatever that is?
What time do you want to start?
Let's hope for 1 o'clock. I don't know. Hope the Asian food isn't coming. Isn't on one of those boats in Long Beach Harbor. But let's.
What is going on? Like, okay, he's making some type of joke, but let's just assess like what goes into, a joke is just sort of like something that's on your mind. You think that everybody,
everybody in the room is going to connect with this. It's something that is out there. Aside from the idea that like Asian food, to the extent that you get Asian food in the United States, is made by Americans and is made in America. Like, I mean,
I don't know what reality you're living in. When I order Kung Pao chicken, I have it imported directly on one of those cargo ships, and that's why it's held up at Long Beach.
but when you get, but like I wouldn't ever. Let's put it this way. Let's make it a little bit easier. Like if I was to get order some German food, is my thinking about that German food that these are like foreigners? They're like there's something foreign going on here. Like that's not the first thing that I think about. I just think it's like it's some maybe you know there's a German couple that came to the United States or is a German heritage and they're making German food. Like I don't immediately think foreign-y when I order that food.
I don't think so either.
And then tying it into the ports in Long Beach. Like, I wonder, like, it strikes me as a guy who's just sort of like using his platform to push stuff that is like pretty political in the news. And I mean, I don't know how that implicates the case in any way. But quite a judge they've got there.
And that's kind of what this guy's auditioning for right-wing curry favors, Lance Ito, right? I would guess that he wants to be some sort of personality, the way he leans back. And Vic Berger had this edit of him leaning back in that ridiculous throne-like chair that he's in. He's relishing every moment of it. And there's a reason that the prosecution did not want him involved. They were, Will Bunch, I think he writes for the Philly Inquirer, had a long thread about the problematic decisions this judge has made since the 80s.
I want to make this absolutely clear. I didn't follow the trial in general, I don't, not just as a function of this show. This was a policy that I had dating back to pre-O.J. Simpson. There are structural reasons why I imagine a guy like OJ gets off money, and structural reasons why a guy like Kyle Rittenhouse get off not money. As a broader policy matter, this is not a great precedent. The idea that anybody has a license to pick up a gun and go decide, I'm in charge of policing a protest now. Why are you in charge of the policing the protest? 'Cause, man, look at my gear. For people who are worried about, free speech, I don't know. Like, I would feel my speech inhibited more by guys who show up with guns than people who start to call me like, names that I don't agree with. My free speech is not inhibited by you saying that I'm bigoted or a racist or a whatever it is that you're complaining about. My speech is sort of materially inhibited when you show up with a gun and express like dissatisfaction with what I'm doing. This guy has like basically won the right-wing lottery. He will be a star in that world. For what? For killing 2 people and shooting a third. I guess presumably because it was a protest. Are we going to be seeing people like just bring their guns on to the subway and just be like, yeah, no, I'm just making sure people pay their tolls, making sure that people aren't using somebody else's Metro card? I mean, where does like what we take guns now and make sure that people come to a full stop at a stop sign? We shoot out the tires of your car. Citizens citation. I mean, one would think that there would be discouragement for this type of behavior
And I don't understand how people think that there shouldn't have been a trial. You just like sign off on, it was at a protest. Killed them. Killed them. Seems pretty obvious to me.
When, Tucker Carlson says, do you feel that this has destroyed your life? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? This kid's like a new mascot for the GOP. Has this destroyed his life? As I said, he's going to run for Congress, state legislature, whatever it is. He has a future in the Republican Party. Don Jr. just tweeted out or Instagrammed a Photoshop photo of 2024, his father, putting the Congressional Medal of Freedom on Rittenhouse. Has this destroyed your life? No, everything that Tucker Carlson and Fox News and the Republican Party is doing is ensuring that this kid is set up for success. They are finding him to be a very useful tool so that there are more Kyle Rittenhouses throughout the country. That's what Republicans want. And the fact that they're setting him up as this avatar of conservative aggrievement allows for that. They want to multiply Kyle Rittenhouses. They want to ensure that left-wing protests and agitation is chilled and that they have a vigilante force that roams the streets and does things like this.
Do you think the reason Kyle Rittenhouse is so welcomed by a society that was in part won by racialized terrorism, that realized it might require racialized terrorism to maintain that? But
I mean,
honestly,
I don't think there's that level. Well, I mean, who knows? Maybe there's that level of intellectual understanding behind it, but I think it's also just sort of, I mean, when people say, like, why do you spend so much time on pushing back on conservative narratives and whatnot? And I don't want people to misinterpret that that we think that we have, a particular, a level of influence. But it's just as an exercise, but also, butterfly wings. This is, I don't know how the interpretation of what Kyle Rittenhouse did will impact our history in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, or our future, I should say. But we certainly have examples from Reconstruction and so on, and like putting up those statues in the 1920s as to what it does to our present day. Mm-hmm. Like, we can't know. That's what you begin to understand when you talk to a historian like that, the implication of journalism, of narrative building, of all those things in the moment. And, who knows what any, given one of those events in the reporting, if it would have had, what kind of influence it would have had. We just, you can't really sort of like disentangle all those things. But largely it is, the lesson is, it's important to make sure that events that are happening are interpreted and are reported in a way that is that is not a lie, because that lie can actually have a lot more durability and impact than you probably anticipate in the moment. That, understand, there are reasons why the online community and off the online community, but there's reason why people fight this stuff out on Twitter, and whether they're conscious of it or not, you gotta suppress this stuff or magnify and enhance this stuff in the moment, because that's where the trajectory starts. I mean, that's, can you imagine what would the difference have been if YouTube existed during Reconstruction? The reason why you're seeing such pushback to critical race theory, and it's obviously not critical race theory that's being taught there, but there is sort of there is
You may get more history, more explicit history, maybe history of Reconstruction in some of these schools, but also just an awareness of the dynamic that's going on in these countries. I would love it if they teach critical race theory in schools or some derivation, and maybe they will. But the reason why there's a pushback on it is, again, for this same reason. You need to obscure the dynamics that are going on in our society.
Well,
it's not confusing. It's only confusing because you're trying to sort of place that type of logic. Let's be clear. This is not, Rittenhouse was not going out there to protect anything.
Yes.
I mean, let's be honest. Let's be clear here. He didn't know what was under threat when he got into his car with the gun. He wanted to show up and, face off with these people, with these protesters. There was he couldn't have articulated a certain thing. There could be trouble down there. I better get down there. Why are you going? Because I got a gun. And just to be clear, this wasn't his job to protect his community.
And it was not his community.
Well, you could argue that it was probably the nearest, town to where he lives, 10 minutes, 20 minutes away. I don't know. But it wasn't his job. It wasn't his job. And also we should say it's not quite clear that there was any threat to the community. And having a gun when you're meeting protesters who have a skateboard or something, that also seems a little tyrannical to me. And the idea that he's been slandered by the judicial system because he was prosecuted for killing 2 people. He killed them dead.
I like how it's the media reaction to him taking 2 lives that's going to F him up for the rest of his life and not having killed 2 people.
Right. Yeah. You can get past the shooting the 2 people because they were armed with a skateboard and they were coming after you for being there with a gun in a menacing fashion. That you can get past. But the indignity of going to trial and having to cry when you're on the witness stand, that is horrible. What kind of country is it where you cannot shoot 2 people dead and injure a third, and you have to spend 2 or 3 weeks in a trial? He had to buy a suit. He had to buy a suit and wear a tie. My God. And now he's having to go around to all these it's hard.
You got to feel bad for the Covington Catholic kids, because is there anyone going to remember them now that Kyle's the new
That's right. They've lost the countless Fox News opportunities now that Rittenhouse is here.
He is now, I'm sure, incredibly happy that he murdered those 2 people because it's given him this station in life.
Yeah, I mean, he's a symbol that you can use violence against your political opponents. And that's what, and I agree with Nomi, and that can't be stressed enough, that all the folks that were getting involved in dipping their toe in and being seen just in the vicinity of Kyle Rittenhouse to say that it's good that he got off, I think they are fascist enablers, absolutely, to a man.
This is fascism. I mean, this is he's the perfect kind of fascist warrior that this movement wants. I just don't know how new it is, though. I guess it is a different dynamic in the way that, it's being presented. But we had George Zimmerman before him, and we had countless lynchings that were never documented on camera before that. This kind of vigilantism has been deified for a while, or elevated for a while on the right. I guess it's just now there's every medium to do it on.
I was in London when the Tottenham riots happened. Somebody was killed, and I'm sorry, this is just what happens when police just murder people. And I think it's a healthy response. I'm sorry. I think it could have been channeled in better ways, of course. But that you're going to go and support Kyle fucking Rittenhouse, the kid who represents the vigilante response to that stuff, I think it's fascist. All those people are going to support Kyle Rittenhouse if he presses charges against any media organization that supposedly misrepresented him, a guy who decided to take a gun to attack a Black Lives Matter protest.
Yep.
All these folks, the free speech folks that were also in the Kyle Rittenhouse, celebration committee, they will support this.
Yep.
Maybe some of them on the edges will see that it's untenable, but a lot of them will support this, or they will shut up about it and not say shit about it.
Yep.
That there is frankly a super PAC for libel laws or libel legislation to go after news organizations for what? Calling a kid who took a gun and killed somebody at a Black Lives Matter rally a white supremacist. I'm sorry, I don't care what a judge of your peers or so-called thing. I don't respect that process. Like, who gives a shit? People have their opinions.
Right. I think it's fair to call someone a murderer when he murdered somebody.
Yeah, I mean, like by American justice system, not a murderer. I'm happy to stipulate that. But in my eyes, he's a murderer, and he's a anti-black white supremacist murderer. Like, well, I don't know why you go to a Black Lives Matter protest with a gun and then just shoot people like that.
I wonder, like, if Kyle is getting all this play again now because of this shooting. I wonder, like, he's turning up all of a sudden on various programs. He was on Charlie Kirk's show yesterday or the day after or day before. Now he's on Tucker Carlson's. Sometimes, somebody just needs a guest and they get him. And then, one of these shows, they say, he got good clicks. Let's have him on. But I wonder if it's not also because in the wake of this shooting, they want to present their hero with the gun. Here's the good guy with a gun who killed people, but it was okay. And let's be clear, he killed them with a gun. My killing 2 people with a gun at a protest where I was a self-appointed protector of some, like,
a car wash
or some other stores, has caused me to be infamous in certain circles around the country.
Yeah, it's not the way people are talking about it, bro. It's what you did.
I mean, and to be clear, a jury found him not guilty of murder or any other charges. I think he just gets to walk free after killing 2. This is
still killed people.
And let's be clear, he's obviously attempting to go after the defamers out there. So I want to be very clear. He killed 2 people with a gun. He killed 2 people with a gun because he was ostensibly protecting some businesses in a town, the neighboring town. Self-appointed guardian of those things. Yeah, I was going to hire the guy who showed up at a protest as the self-appointed defender of some of the stores there and ended up shooting, multiple people, killing 2 of them. White communists' opinion is that Kyle Rittenhouse did not go to protect a business. He went to intimidate left-wing protesters for Black lives. This is what white supremacist paramilitaries have done since Ferguson. Rittenhouse was acting like a Hitler Youth with a full confidence of a 1960 Mississippi Klansman policing a civil rights march. Let's not push the right strategic lies. I mean, I think I was just going along, but I understand your point. And that is a valid opinion, in my estimation. All right.
I mean, I buy that. I also think, like, just stating his explicit motivations was like, I killed to defend property. Like, that's what he said. That is, like, to me, like, that's the formula for fascism.
Right. Now, I understand why people find it really hard to believe that this guy was so concerned with someone else's store that he had never met or seen. I mean,
it's odd.
It is odd. It is, and the idea that it was like, the specifics of the protest, that wasn't the issue. I was just concerned that somebody might go in and steal, some Skittles.
One of us, no matter how much money we make, and now with Twitch, I definitely make a decent amount of money a month, and I'm sure you guys do as well. We are way closer. We're infinitely closer to homelessness than we are to becoming the next Jeff Bezos. As a matter of fact, I think even Elon Musk is closer to becoming homeless than he is to becoming Jeff Bezos. Like, it's crazy.